Washington advancing to the national championship, but they nearly lost the game because of poor late-game execution. Washington had a 6-point lead with just over a minute to play. Instead of kneeling the ball and giving Texas very little time on the clock, they ran the football and punted. On the punt, Huskies interfered on the fair catch, giving Texas an extra 15 yards. Quinn Ewers and the Longhorns drove down the field, had a chance to win it with 1 second left from the 13-yard line. Washington's Elijah Jackson broke up the pass that was intended for Adonai Mitchell, and Washington hangs on 37-31 to run their winning streak to 21 in a row. What the heck just happened? I don't know. They hung on, and we're going to find out what happened because Chip Patterson, the host of the Cover 3 podcast, had a front row seat in the Big Easy, at the Sugar Bowl, at the Superdome. Chip, there's confetti all around you. Everyone is making their way out of the stadium, and Texas almost made their way out of the stadium with a win. What happened in the end of that game?
Well, there's more relief, I think, than we would have initially thought, especially at the third quarter. But, you know, just talking to some of the players, there was an acknowledgement that, yeah, you wish you had been able to get those first downs coming down the stretch. A lot of different players were mentioning having to settle for field goals instead of getting touchdowns once we got into the later stages of the game. There are all these different spots that if this game had broken the other way, if Quinn Ewers had been able to punch it into the end zone, we would have said that these were the reasons for just a colossal collapse. But once they did get in scoring position, credit Washington's defense for not getting shaken up by the moment. They stood tall. They relied on the way that they'd carried themselves through much of the game, especially through the third quarter. And like you mentioned, being able to make those winning plays with that 1 second that was even put back on the clock. Once Purple Rain started blaring from the speakers here in the Superdome, I think that people could finally catch their breath and start to say that as a Washington fan, you know, as a member of the Washington program, we did it because the Huskies were the better team for so long, all throughout the evening, and they just were dominant on offense against this Texas defense, neutralizing an interior defensive line that had been hyped up by me and others, and being able to emerge victorious. So, you know, we're not talking about all those different mistakes along the way and now blaming them for anything. Instead, and this was a great comment talking to some of the Washington players, instead you're circling those mistakes and you're saying, this is what we can clean up, because the challenge that's ahead, no doubt, the Michigan Wolverines, undefeated, just like the Huskies, this is going to be yet another step up in competition where the margin for error is, again, even smaller than it was here on Monday night.
Yeah, Washington, as you said, a collective sigh of relief to hang on and win that game, because we could be sitting here roasting Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb on their play calling. And we can still do that at the end of the game and some of the poor end-of-game execution, but we also are going to give a lot of credit to Michael Penix Jr., who was solid. I mean, 430 yards and 2 touchdowns, and it helps when you have 3 NFL-ready wide receivers. What did you see from him and what he was able to do? I mean, he picked apart the Longhorns.
Yeah, 11 straight completions to start the third quarter. Kalen DeBoer said it was very impressive that it was very important that they were going to come out and be aggressive coming out of the locker room. It was a score at halftime that I think made the Huskies a little bit disappointed. They felt like they should have been up by more. So when they put their foot on the gas in the third quarter with those long drives, deflating drives. I mean, Texas only had the ball for about 2 minutes of game time, only had 2 drives, and only had about 30 yards all throughout that third quarter. So Washington was methodical. They were intentional, and they kept the ball out of Quinn Ewers' hands. They were adding scores, not touchdowns always, but adding scores to the deficit along the way. I think that what is so great about this group of wide receivers is that they take a 50-50 ball, and Hakeem, they change the math. Because when it's Michael Penix Jr. throwing the ball to Rome Odunze or Jalen Polk or Jalen McMillan, that ain't a 50-50 ball. That is 75-25. That is 80-20, because Texas's young secondary oftentimes was in the right position, sometimes like all over the wide receiver, and still these catches are being made. having some conversations, just sort of watching this game, you almost hope that we do get, the esteemed Liz Edwards mentioned, you would almost like to see the Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase type situation here. I want to see Michael Penix Jr. and one of his superstar wide receivers also get to play together in the NFL, because this feels a little bit, not the total team, but just the quarterback wide receiver side of it. Ooh, I'll get some chills thinking about it, because it is some shades of that 2019 LSU offense.
Yes, as exciting as that is, there's also major concern, though, for their starting running back, Dylan Johnson. He's been dealing with a foot injury since back in November. Scores a couple of touchdowns in this game, but we saw him being helped off the field. You spoke to some of his teammates. What's the latest on Dylan Johnson?
We don't have any medical update for you. When I hear a player talk about his injured teammate and say, yeah, he's good, he's going to be all right, okay. I think that it's good that his spirits are high. I think it's good that his teammates are discussing it in a way that is not already mourning his potential absence from the team in the next game moving forward. But it did not look great, and I think that his status for the game is going to be a major factor in how I handicap it and how I try to, look at the different ways that Washington's offense is going to go up against the Michigan defense, which played incredible earlier in the day in the Rose Bowl win against Alabama. So the good news is, his spirits are high and his teammates are giving us positive reviews, but they're not doctors. So we'll wait for the official diagnosis on Johnson's status for the national championship game.
One sentence or less, which means you can say a full sentence or one word here. Who is winning the national championship? Your pick 7 days out. Doesn't have to be, can be straight up. Who you going with? Michigan, Washington?
I'm going with the Michigan Wolverines. There has been a sense of inevitability with this group, and the way that they, like Washington, played better than the opponent and seemingly were going to hand it away, only to rise to the occasion when the money was on the table. I'm going to stick with the Wolverines here, but the zeros in the loss column for both these teams makes this a fascinating, exciting matchup, and I can't wait to spend all week breaking it down on CBS Sports HQ.
That was more than one sentence, but I'll allow it because you're my friend, and I appreciate you. I'm going Washington because you can't spell Washington without wagon chip, and you know that. You know it. Appreciate you.
I know.
For more awesome college football content, join the Cover 3 podcast. Chip Patterson joined by Tom Fornelli, Danny Cannell, Bud Elliott as they take you from the National Signing Day to the National Championship. In-depth analysis, picks against the spread, the Cover 3 podcast. Download and follow today.